Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from the Frontier, and as always, thank you for stopping by. Let me start with the Turkish Lira. It's resuming its drop after a counter-trend rally yesterday. This chart is from Holga. We're around the 640 level last time I had a look. I did an interview with Rochelle Carey of Al Jazeera. It's about 5 minutes, talking about Turkey, South Africa, the contagion effect, and my theory that essentially the dollar's been weaponized. And I'm not sure whether it was deliberate and by design or not, but essentially what I was saying in there is it's become the equivalent of a remote-controlled drone. And it's sort of targeting a number of emerging market and frontier market economies. Have a listen if you've got a second. And that goes back to what I was saying over the weekend, that if Trump wanted to press his advantage, he should buy the dollar, not sell it, and that the dollar is currently seriously weaponized. 10-day Lira volatility is now above Bitcoin volatility by the most on record, would you believe? This was yesterday's 8% price gain, which is really meaningless when you drop 40. That's from JS Blockland. So it remains under a lot of pressure. I think the issue is, will Erdogan capitulate? I suspect he will. The question is the timing of that capitulation. It's been a brutal August for Bitcoin and Ether. Take a look at this chart. But then, as Dieter Bob says, the only Bitcoin chart that matters to HODLers is this one. Bitcoin, interestingly, has returned to the scene of the crime. This is around 5,800, 5,900, 4 times. Have a look at this from markets. Home thoughts to the youth of today. I also have a wish to make. Be the script writers of your destiny and feature yourselves as stars that showed the way towards a brighter future. Find the Madiba in you. And there's so many great words he said, but my favorite is, there is no passion to be found playing small in settling for a life that is less than the one you are capable of living. Nelson Mandela. Perseid meteor shower, Trona, near Death Valley, California. Getty Images. NASA's Parker Solar Probe is on its way to the sun aboard the Delta IV rocket. I took this long exposure pic from downtown St. Petersburg. That's Brian, weather Brian. And finally, I like this photograph of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, 2001, Konstantin Manos of Magnum Photos. Political reflections. China is pioneering multiple custodial systems targeting increasingly broad demographics in a manner that amounts to enforced disappearances. After several decades of unprecedented growth and global adulation, China watchers are increasingly focusing on the headwinds. The world's second largest economy suddenly appears to be dithering, to be perhaps even frail. China is pioneering multiple custodial systems targeting increasingly broad demographics in a manner that often amounts to enforced disappearances, which arguably means that China will utilize enforced disappearance on a scale never before seen. The UN is responding to what it calls many credible reports that 1 million ethnic Uyghurs in China are held in what resembles a massive internment camp that is shrouded in secrecy. A recent United States Commission's report described the situation in Xinjiang as the largest mass incarceration of a minority population in the world today. I've written about it several times. It really is a laboratory experiment in control and surveillance, intrusive control and surveillance, coercive, and in fact looking to change behavior at a mass scale. Pepe Escobar has written in Asia Times, China is able to cut the US off in a minute from its rare earth exports, creating a US national security catastrophe. Now, that's when a trade war will enter real incandescent territory. I said it's not going to happen, Pepe. Unless China does not buy Iranian energy, US sanctions as a geo-economic tool are essentially meaningless. This is Pepe again, and I disagree with him as well. I think President Trump seems to be relishing his financial warfare strategies. He has Khamenei on the run, Maduro in Venezuela is being attacked by remote-controlled drone, and Xi looks ever so fragile. 2 high-ranking military officials were detained in the ongoing investigation into the attempt on President Maduro's life using explosive-laden drones. And the point I want to make in response to Pepe as well is, look, August 2017, I wrote a piece called China Rising, just a year ago. But since then, Xi Jinping has found himself in an existential chicky-run competition with POTUS, just at the moment he put himself on the pedestal. It's sort of hubris and Shakespeare at a geopolitical scale. 9th of July, I was writing Tariff Wars, who blinks first? And I said then Trump has now turned his attention to Xi Jinping and thrown him the keys, challenging him to a chicky run. And that from a trading perspective, the fire starter, the chicky run specialist, is actually beginning to shake Xi. Omarosa, the cult of Trumpworld, this is from a few snippets from The Atlantic. She's written a book called Unhinged, set to be released on Tuesday. Charts her 15 years in the cult of Trumpworld from her apprentice days to the West Wing. She uses the word often throughout her 330-page memoir, cult, describing its leader as mentally impaired, his followers as worshipful. It was the 3rd night of festivities when she met Pence and his 3 brothers, who looked like his clothes in the Trump family box. We always knew this would happen to Mike. He's always wanted to be vice president, one of his brothers said with a wink. Perhaps his attraction to Pence was another sign of his loneliness, said Manigo Newman. No one else in his life gazed at him with such adoration. Certainly not his wife anymore, maybe Ivanka. Trump has an affinity for pretty women, she writes. He'd rather have a pretty woman with no experience around than a qualified, less attractive woman. When his replacement, Anthony Scaramucci, was fired, Omarosa claimed that Scaramucci started crying. Ivanka apparently asked her father what he thought of Kushner. He seems a little sweet to me, she writes, Trump said, using his phrasing for gay. Look, she's been impressive. She's been well prepared, unruffled, and in control. Altogether very interesting. And she seems to have learned lessons at the feet of Trump that he hasn't even managed to learn. And that's why I think, in that conversation where he was pretending not to know she'd been fired, he was genuinely a little bit concerned about what she might do. And she's now doing it. From today's morning lineup, the Turkish lira is having its best day versus the dollar since October 2008. That was yesterday. You will recall that when the Turkish president fended off a coup attempt 2 years ago, he appealed to his supporters via FaceTime, the Apple video chat. Ironically, now he's saying if they have the iPhone, there is Samsung as an alternative. The comments by the Turkish leader were particularly remarkable, given that several of his top ministers are frequently seen with iPhones. Turkey's lira's crisis tests Erdogan's authoritarian approach. This is in the New York Times. Turkey's economic troubles, analysts say, are largely of Mr. Erdogan's own making. They have less to do with his dispute with the United States and the prospect of greater sanctions than with Mr. Erdogan's deepening economic interference as he attempts to bend the logic of monetary policy and global financial markets to suit his political purposes. It's not going to happen, is it? When the people fall into difficulties because of monetary policies, who are they going to hold accountable, he asked. Since they'll ask the president about it, we have to give off the image of a president who is influential on monetary policies. Turkey has weathered financial storms before thanks to its size and diversity, but the outcome will depend on the coherence and predictability of the policies that are pursued. That's Moody's. And his comments go to what I was saying, which is, what I was saying is, to Erdogan, like Xi Jinping, is caught in the strongman conundrum. If you are the strongman and you place yourself on a pedestal, then you own the problem, and suddenly cause and effect is very, very straightforward. I think that's why Erdogan's taking a big risk, and he needs to wake up and smell the coffee. Even if they got dollars, we got our people, our God. In the markets, I said that's called a Hail Mary pass. And he remains right at the edge. Trump seems to be relishing his financial warfare strategies. Erdogan reminds me of a Shakespearean figure, slayed enemies real and not real. His chest has been puffed up with pride. He even rescued the Emir of Qatar. But he has now met his match, that match being the markets, and I hope he still has Madame Lagarde's number on speed dial. And the point I was making is such as the ultimate bonfire of populist vanity. The populist leaders with their cheerleading claques have drunk their own Kool-Aid, and therein lies our ultimate salvation. They will be driven over the edge. The edge, there is no honest way to explain it, because the only people who really know where it is are the ones who have gone over. I was saying Erdogan is right at that edge. International markets, world container port traffic throughout stood at 752 million TEU in 2017, reflecting an additional 42.3 million TEU over the previous year, which is interesting. Elon Musk is working with Silver Lake and Goldman Sachs to take Tesla private. In a tweet late Monday, California time, Elon Musk said he's also lined up legal advisors for the possible transaction. A Tesla spokesman said Musk's tweet refers to his own advisors and attorneys. Tesla board members didn't immediately respond to requests for comment. The posts prolong Musk's piecemeal approach to explaining how he'll pull off a privatization of his money-losing automaker at a more than $70 billion market capitalization. Since the 47-year-old dropped that bombshell, he's used social media to sporadically update investors in an information vacuum. Vertical Group, this is via Zero Hedge, says that you should sell Tesla, and the price target is $88 a share. Collapsing Model 3 demand, trail of mistruths, likely steep losses in Q3, Q4, go private unlikely. Let's move on to the currency markets. Euro dollar 113.24. This is the lowest since July 2017. We've broken down hard since we went through that 115, 10, 15, 15 level. Dollar index 96.81 headed to 100. Japanese yen 111.30, Swiss franc 0.9960, the pound 127.03, this is a 52-week low, Aussie 0.7213, Indian rupee fresh record low above 70, South Korean won 1133.65, the rial 386.65 going towards 4, Egyptian pound 17.8950, and the rand softening up again 14.3496. From Macro Rico, look at this US trade weighted index, and you can see what is the issue at hand here is the strength of the dollar and its weaponization. Goldman Sachs, talking about the euro dollar, said add to downside between 114.27 and 114.66, target 112 or 111. I think we're going to go below that. Here's a closer look at it. Have a look at this comparison between the US and Asian stock markets. The biggest stock in emerging markets reports earnings today. If there's one name that can influence momentum of the group, it's Tencent. That'll be interesting. The Hang Seng hanging by the tip of its fingernails. Tencent reports earnings later. Given its weighting, where that goes, this goes. Commodity markets, gold breaking down further, 1187. Trading, I think it's going lower still. Crude oil, $66.11, hanging in there at the moment on heightened geopolitical stress. Emerging markets, emerging market local currency bonds about to come back to life or taking their last breath, asked Pinecone Macro. 5th of February, I was putting out a sell when I said, interestingly, JP Morgan's MB spread is down to 258 basis points, the tightest since mid-2014. And I said, how long this lasts is anybody's guess. And this is where it is now. Thank you to Sun Chartist. Turks, in trying to help the banks, have suspended mark-to-market calculations on capital adequacy ratios and saying that until prices of securities normalize. So a little bit of tinkering there. My piece, as I said, was called Cold Turkey. Over the weekend, President Trump seems to be relishing his financial warfare strategies. And I was saying there's Khamenei on the run, Maduro in Venezuela being attacked by a remote-controlled drone, and Xi looking ever so fragile. Citi is saying that Erdogan is pouring oil into the fire again with his threat to boycott US electronic goods, saying it may unsettle some market participants, especially as it risks further deterioration of US-Turkey diplomatic relations. Indian rupee offshore highest on record. This is a chart from Sun Chartist. Take you back to that piece I wrote about the end of Halcyon days. As you can see, those Halcyon days, and if you want to know what they were, it's from the Latin Alcyone, daughter of Aulus and wife of Cex. When her husband died in a shipwreck, Alcyone threw herself into the sea, where the gods transformed them both into Halcyon birds. Kingfishers. Have a look at this. This is a male oriental dwarf kingfisher feeding a female to seek her acceptance. When Alcyone made her nest on the beach, waves threatened to destroy it. Aulus restrained his winds and kept them calm during 7 days in each year so she could lay her eggs. These became known as the Halcyon days, when storms do not occur. Today the term is used to denote a past period that is being remembered for being happy and or successful. At least 40 people were killed by paramilitary forces in eastern Ethiopia over the weekend, according to Reuters. Very interesting report about this sort of container traffic going around the world from UNCTAD. The link is there, but it's South Africa, for example, TEU 2010 3.959 million, and 2017 4.634 million, about a 20% increase 2010 through 2017. You would have expected more. My piece prior to the one about Erdogan was about the Indian Ocean economy in a port race. I was referring to what we're seeing happening unfold from Djibouti all the way down to Durban. Sudanese hit by bread shortages as currency crunch escalates. Price of the Sudanese pound has been declining since the beginning of the year after the government devalued the currency to 18. More than double its peg of 6.7 pounds to the dollar. The pound, which has since been devalued further and is now officially set at 29 pounds to the dollar, was trading at 40 pounds to the dollar on the black market. South African all share down 3.19% year to date. Dr. Adrian Saville, who I follow on Twitter, talking about the rand. It is in the process of collapse. Not only do we, South Africa, have a scratchy throat, we've been pushed into the cold. If Turkey blows out, we haven't seen the worst of the rand yet, he said. Dollar versus rand, last trading 14.3496. The point to make here is we've lost all the gains we had in that euphoria episode. We're back at levels where we were when the finance ministers were resigning or being sacked. Egyptian pound 17.8950, Nigerian all share down 7.73% year to date. Ghana Stock Exchange up 9.66% year to date. Two images of NTV Uganda journalists at Gulu police station taken earlier. How can a person be arrested while reporting live on TV, be charged with inciting violence and malicious damage? Kenya TEU 2010 695,600 and now at 1.2 million. So that's a faster growth rate than South Africa. Kenya is curtailing its once dominant coffee and tea production in favour of avocados. This is according to Saharan. 22nd of Jan, I was writing about the millennials with their avocado eating and cryptocurrency trading ways are just as likely to be African as they are European or American. Top in business, ARM boss ousted in UK firms board shake-up. British sovereign wealth fund CDC moves to tighten grip on management of troubled cement maker. Quite a story. Stanbic has rallied 4.71% yesterday to close at a 2018 high of 100 and is plus 29.93% on a total return basis this year, and I think there's further to go. They reported first half earnings per share rose 104.78%, and keep an eye on that. I think that's a dark horse and can put in quite a big return, another 30%. TPS Serena Hotels reported first half earnings. Sales in the first half were up 2.4% to 2.68 billion shillings. Loss before income tax was 231 million versus 230 million the previous time. Earnings per share a negative 1 shilling and 12 cents versus negative 1 shilling and 9 cents. Big decrease in cash and cash equivalents, 824.18 million. They said there is increased interest in selling destination East Africa. The first phase of the redevelopment of Nairobi Serena will be handed over in August 2018. Given the seasonal nature of the tourism industry in East Africa, the results of the first half should not be taken as a basis for forecasting the full year's result. Having looked at their results all these years, that's a fact. Very strong second half rebound skew. Results for the period have been impacted by lower than expected sales from foreign leisure tourism arrivals in Kenya during Q1. No interim dividend. Look, there's always been a material second half skew. I expected a stronger first half, but evidently Q2 strengthened versus Q1. Let me show you some photographs. This is riding along the shore, Lake Elementaita, which is a beautiful place they have down there. That's my wife and my daughter Hannah. This is the Mombasa Serena, which is probably the oldest and the one I know the best, because that's where I grew up. Mr. Mahmood Jan Mohammed, who I did this interview with a few years ago, was the manager then of that hotel and a friend of the family, so we used to go a lot. Sunrise from the bedroom. This is the Polana, which if you haven't visited, you should. It's in Maputo. This is another photograph of Lake Elementaita. And then I wrote a piece about the Serena and how I lost my heart at 13 to a girl in a bikini. Used to play me ping pong. Sugar bribe dished out in toilet. They were telling us that money is not our mother's and that we were being too arrogant. They went to the toilets and corridors to dish out money. This is an awful situation in sugar. Private equity company Catalyst has bought a mattress maker Superfoam. They also have stakes in Chai Bora, Chemi Cotex, EFCO Solutions, Zanufa Laboratories, Jamie Bora Bank, Orbit Chemical Industries, and Yes Brands. Kenya shilling is at 100.7. Nairobi all shares the Nairobi all shares marginally higher year to date, about 1%. NSE 20 is down 10.63% year to date. Thanks as always for stopping by.